There was a question raised that Imran Khan delivered the finest speech at General Assembly to the United Nations, and what the steps should be taken later on. No doubt, speech was a matchless one. The way plenty of others speakers spoke on the international affairs, the way they were representing to their nations and the countries, they might have raised many of the problems, and they have discussed and given the guidelines and would have invited the attention of the Secretary General and the President of America and tried their level best to pinpoint their core issues. But the speech of Imran Khan was of an outstanding one. Why it was? After all, because he is a good speaker. He is well versed at English. He got grooming all of in the Western belt. He lived in them and studied their behaviors, studied their societies, studies their each and every nook and corner of their societies, the way they behave, the way they study others and interact, and what they have their approaches towards the life, to the religion, to the cultures, to the traditions, to the countries at the larger. But in the present world, the country which are facing the core issues, fundamental issues, the issues of economy and ideology, those one have the good representative. If they have, they are to raise the issues the way they have the impact on the overall life. The way we are facing the problem of Kashmir at the neighboring countries, tyranny and suppression, what a repression and persecution is being given to the Kashmiris. The issue is the hallmark of the story that Imran Khan brought out there. Though he talked on the climatic, money laundering, Islamophobia, and Kashmir, he talked at the four areas and gave away all of the concerned recommendations and guidelines to the body of the world community seated there. Plenty of might have the awareness and knowledge about Islam and the problems that the present Muslim Ummah is facing. He hadn't gone to the thorough study of the Middle East and the overall what the Muslim Ummah is facing at the present time and where the Muslim Ummah is standing. It's standing at the crossroad. He largely focused Kashmir because Kashmir, as a twist and split case, Britain's left behind as the remains of the Britain's colonialism, because Britons have been getting 60% revenues and rebate from the only India and the subcontinent, and the 40% from the rest of the world for last 200 years before the World War is erupted out, two rather. But when they returned to their homeland, they left a very, very, you can say, crucial issue of Kashmir at the crossroad. They are giving the sacrifices and they have been giving sacrifices for last 70 and 72 years, as the way Maharaja left behind Kashmiris in the quagmire and took no notice of them, that he was after all the leading figure of the Kashmiris and he was representing to them. As a humanitarian case, he might have attended them, but he went out of the Kashmir, left the Kashmiris in the lurch and took no notice of them, the way the Britons left behind this one state of Jammu and Kashmir. As the independent states were around 560, 65, 62 around, and all the independent states that have been in the affiliation and association with Britain's government, and they were given independent and individual space and right to governance. But when the Britons were leaving the subcontinent after dividing it into two parts, Pakistan and India, around 562 independent states, the states of the princes, were given the right to that they are to either get affiliation with one of the constitutions assembly, either Pakistan or the other India, or the third option, they are to decide about at the individual space and individual level. At the state of Hyderabad, there was, you can say, the Hindus were in majority and Muslim was the ruler. In the same way, in Kashmir, Muslims were in the majority and Hindu Maharaja was the ruler. And 14 of the independent states, the states of the princes, were naturally affiliated geographically with Pakistan, and rest of all ones were in the domain and the association on the geographical grounds with India. As Indian Act of Independence allowed and given away the right to self-determination for their individual behalf. But when British were quitting India after dividing the two nations, the Muslims and the Hindus, to separate entities that has two separate identities and histories and their characters and their leaders and the founders, there was a cut line between the Hindus and the Muslims. Muslims came from Arabia and the Hindus came from the as Aryan Samaj or Aryan society. As we know it well, that the Indians are the oldest civilization, as Americans are the latest civilization, the most modern one, and the Indian civilization is the most outtrodden one. But after all, they claim of that we are the true living beings of the land, true owner of the land, and all ones rest of came from the foreign areas and have been occupying and conquering them until the Hindus got the sense of living, sense of administration, and sense of execution, and then they got the sense of majority, that we are in majority after all, they started, you can say, protesting and started raising their voice that they should be given right to the all of the constitutional demandings and understandings. In the same way, when you can say the Hindus have always been under the command of the foreigners, rulers, they have been under the command of the foreigners influencing and impact and command and control, the way Mughals ruled on them. Only the king of Mughals, one of leading king, Akbar Badshah, remained the most soft-hearted towards them and the lenient one. It was the only king of the Muslims world that to some extent merged the Islam uh, into such policy of tolerance and acceptability and acceptance and adaptability that he did some of the marriages from the Hindus clan, and his next one succeeder, his son also did the marriage from the Hindus clan and Hindus families. In this way, he ran the policy of tolerance and liberalism, and he, you can say, ruled the Indian, you can say, continent, subcontinent over the 50 years. And he gave the concept of secularity and liberality and liberalism in 15th and 16th century, when Shakespeare might have not got birth, who is considered to be the champion of nature and true understanding of the human psychology, laid bare the rules for the humanity, either of the politics or of the ideological or whatever and however religion and cultures are to be meted out, to be taken as individual, as collective. So when you talk about the twist and the complexity of the matter that Britons left behind when they were quitting India in 1947-48, Kashmir issue has been left behind, one of the most critical one that left the one of the arm of the subcontinent in trouble, because division and distribution came on the basis of ideology, two-nation theory, the way I mentioned earlier. The majority areas of Hinduism and the rest of communities were to get, you can say, association and alliance with the Hindus, and the Muslims were also in majority, though came from the foreign land, but they ruled over here and they got the supremacy once and got the right to live here. Britons can go return to their homeland, but Muslim can, but they did not go towards the Arabian land, because for the Muslims all the land is the land of Almighty Allah, and wherever they will go, they will take it that God is also here, and where from they are coming, the God is the same one there. So they take the all land as the land of Almighty Allah, and on the land of Almighty Allah, the right to live only have the right of the believers. Though they don't deny the right of living and the right of all of the rest of to be snatched, wherever they would be exercising the authorities as a control and command, they would never ever let the minorities or the rest of the communities at the risk of their life. Rather, they will protect to them and will give all of the rights other than the rights of ideological. That is the base of any state, because when Muslims gave their lives for sake of ideology, whenever the constitution will be made, the rights will be given on the equal grounds to get education and get the opportunities at the equal level to reach out to the heights of the life at the material level. But as far as ideology is concerned, some of the areas in the government and in the rulership, Muslims rulers will not allow the non-Muslims to interfere with the ideological supremacy and the basis on which an Islamic state stands for. If everyone is given right to govern and to share in the exercise of the judicial rules, as Muslims believe in Islam, and Islam has its own rules and regulations and principles and legalities that have no concerning with the British law. It has its own Sharia law, though must be radicalized and must be moderated one, and it should be revisited and to be changed as the present material challenges are there. Though the basics beliefs can't be challenged, but material, whatever the changes are coming on, we are to get adjustments over here. This was the very, you can say, point where two nations got separated under the umbrella of Britain's one, because Muslim and Hindus both were living under the domain of Britons after conquering and overtaking the Mughal empires. But when we talk about in the present context, they are primarily going with the severest actions and severest suppression is being given them, and they are facing the present age worst torture, either it is a spiritual one, psychological one, mental one, or of the any levels and strength. Physical torture is also there, but in the present world, the Kashmiris are facing the worst torture beyond the physique. That is the torture of their being the Muslim identity. As there are plenty of other Islamic countries are also undergoing the challenge of survival, as in the Middle East, Libya, Iraq, Lebanon, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, as well as rest of the belt is facing the severest, you can say, the tyranny and the suppression, but that is all one, the constitutional ones, and somewhat the crisis of vision and leadership, because there have been since centuries the rulerships of the kings and the chiefs of the tribes. Those one states are the Islamic states, and the rulers are all the Islamic ones. Either they are in the Arab or in the Ajam regions. But after all, they are having the Muslim rulers and the Muslim ruled, and they are fighting the crisis of vision and ideology also, as Islamic revival is coming on and movements are going against the secularists, elites, and the rulers, and to some extent they are successful. But as far as the alternatives are being constituted and alternatives are being prepared, uh, at the present, you can say we haven't crafted and carved such Muslim rulers that could go for the all of the sections of the society that are the Muslim ones, going above the Shia and Sunni division. They should be neutral to the all sections of the society. They should have no ethnic, you can say, conflicts. There should be ethnic cleansing. But the Middle East, whatever it is facing at the present, that is entirely different than the Kashmir issue. And in the same manner as in Afghanistan, they are in all time exercise and practice that rulers from the foreign lands go there and they are retreated and you can say pulled back and washed out of their lands because they are the warriors. But whosoever comes there to rule them, they come as a whole, as a power on them from the other country and start exercising power on them. But they are the warriors and they fight and they pull them out and they take this as enjoyment because they are the brave ones and they are the strong believers and they are strongly built enough that whosoever the foreigners come to them, they take it as a challenge and play like the children against them, that they do not take pressure of the foreign alliance and the foreign attacks and foreign presence. But when we talk about Kashmir, this is entirely different uh, issue and the case in any, you can say, study or the any interpretation of the world today. As far as the Eastern, you can say Middle East is facing, they are coming out of it. We could say the way the destruction and demolition and annihilation is coming in the Middle East, to some extent it could be the foreign design and the great Israel kind of state is going to be made, the whole Arab and Ajam, because the Muslim elites and the Muslim rulers have been exercising the power on the Muslims. They have been facilitating them. They have been equipping them with all the amenities and the facilities and the material support to their people. But the more they have been making them prosperous, the more they have been killing the right of parallel leadership. They never ever encouraged the parallel leadership to be come on the screen and parallel political power to be made. There have been the kings 40, 30, 20 years they have been, and then the son was to succeed them. And this kind of practice have been weakening the Middle East inside, and their ideology and Islamic culture has been under challenge, and they could not survive with the culture and true teachings of Islam. Though their rulers were the Muslim ones, and down at the public level they were also the Muslim ones, and the resources of the springs, the resources of the oils have been enriching the Middle East, but inside Muslims have been becoming weaker and weaker, and this weaknesses finally pulled them into a utter demolition and destruction. And at the present, the largest section of the Muslim Ummah that is present in the Middle East is facing the challenge of the survival. Economically, they are strong, but by religion, they are getting weaker and weaker. Their generation are becoming the victim of the international influence that is coming by the westernization, globalization, industrialization, and civilization that is coming towards the Muslim countries. That's why the Middle East, you can say, Muslims are divided in larger two sections. One is the rulers and other is the public. The rulers are primarily becoming the secularist and liberalist one, and they are in the grip of the Westerns, you can say, control and command. The way they are sending their investors, the way they are making their insurgency into the Middle East countries, they are making a contribution of the progress by material built-up of Middle East. That's the biggest example of the history was the Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia was such a English character that came in Arab and started studying Arabia, started studying the Arabic language, and he got mixed with the Arabian countries, and he was only known by or cut by his eyes, that his eyes were green one. Rest of all things he got understood. He learned the literature, he learned the language, he learned the culture, he learned the values, he learned the geographical demands, he learned the weather conditions, each and everything he studied. And Lawrence of Arabia was the only English spy that lived in the land of Arabia and single-handedly, as a one-man army, you could say, demolished and destroyed the whole culture of the Arabia and made much weaker inside. And after land of, you can say, that person into this land of Arabia, Muslims have ever never been at the stronger nerves of the Islamic survival. So that, you can say, the Lawrence of Arabia spoiled the Muslims inside, particularly the Arabian countries, and he planted the poisonous and injected the very ideology of the Muslim Ummah, that Muslim Ummah could not rise rightfully to the expectations of the way the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companion based the Jamaat of Islam, the congregation of Islam, exercised in first four caliphates that was being inherited and being transformed to the next upcoming generation. Lawrence of Arabia truly spoiled the land of Arabian and its culture and left such a disastrous impacts and impressions upon the Muslim Ummah that is still struggling and making its entire efforts how to overtake that one. So when we talk about the present, the tribal and the kingship is under challenge, and the second part of the every, you can say, Arab or Ajam, the public is rising, and Islam and Islamic teachings and true history and its, you could say, the formation of characters are being built up, but they were under, you can say, the suppression and tyranny of the rulers that have been liberal and the secularist one, being the Muslims. They have been crushing them, and they have left no space and room for the any opposite figures that would have risen at the level of leadership to be given, alternative political setup to be given. That's why when you can say the foreign invasions came, there was no one to save uh, Saddam Hussein to survive, because he never left any space and room for the alternative and other one leadership to be trained enough that that would have come on and would have saved him by raising the conscience of the Iraqi people. In the same way, the Libyans public did not come forward to save the Colonel Gaddafi. In the same manner, Hosni Mubarak could not be saved. There came replacements, but inside there was somewhat a grudge and hate present for the Muslim elites, though they have been facilitating them and they gave them all the amenities of life, but the way they have been demolished and crushed and you can say washed out from the creeds of Islam and the tenets of Islam, the true teachings of Islam, cultural invasion came through the windows of the Muslim elite. That was a very, very critical one and very, very, you can say, demolishing one. That that that's the way that they the Westerns injected the common man, because common man is the man of any nation, that is to give and produce and provide the leadership of the tomorrow, and is to give the alternative. Kings are never ever there. The chiefs of the tribes are never ever having the capacity and the character and the skill and art craft of the international administration level, how to administrate and execute the international affairs, and how to make access to the international relations. Tribes leaders are the tribes leaders. They think in the same way. They have no capacity and extension of the heart and mind and experience and observation. They are the practice minded and they are narrow thinker and they have the narrow vision. That's why they keep on exercising power and strength in a wrongful way on the public, and public is all time in suppression. In the same manner, in Yemen, you could say the two ethnic groups, Shia Sunni, once again are fighting there. There is no war of the human rights and you can say some true picture of Islam or somewhat other exercising of the modern temper as